Let me go ahead and call the meeting to order. And let's do the roll.
Okay. Do we have Alan Schutz on? Ames Barnett? Bart Gobeil? Governor Brian Kemp? Buddy Harden? Yeah. Kiana Good?
Present.
Chris
Present.
Tobiason? Thank you.
Present.
Thank you. Chris Wells?
Present.
Del Keith?
Present.
Downing Barber? Eric Hughes? Evelyn Olenek? Frank Ginn? Tunk Newman? Greg Dozier? James Wilburn?
Present.
Thank you. Jay Cunningham?
Present.
Thank you. Gerald Mitchell? Joe Yarborough? Karen Vieira?
Present.
Ellie Brownlow?
Present.
Thank you. Kevin Jackson? Logan Leslie?
Present.
Thank you. Mark Butler? Mike Long?
Here in living color.
Mike Roby? Phil Sutton? Randy Beal? Randy Tom? Roy Edward Taylor III? Sam Dasher?
Present.
Thank you. Sam McCurchin?
Present.
Thank you. Stuart Countess? Susan Andrews?
Here.
Thank you. Teresa Fisher?
Here.
Thank you. Tom Cook?
Here.
Thank you. Tyrone Oliver?
Here.
Wendell Dallas?
Here.
Okay, so I'll go back through to those that had not responded. Alan Schutz? Ames Barnett? Bart Gobeil? Governor Brian Kemp? Buddy Harden? Downing Barber? Eric Hughes? Frank Ginn? Tunk Newman? Greg Dozier? Gerald Mitchell? Joe Yarborough? Kevin Jackson? Mark Butler? Mike Roby? Randy Beal? Randy Tom? Roy Edward Taylor III. Let me see if
Naya, this is Evelyn Olenek. I'm sorry I was unable to mute, but I'm present.
Okay, I have you down. I'm sorry, your name.
Oh, thank you.
I'm not seeing anyone else added on the list here. So if you'd like, we could go ahead and get started with the presentation, and I can send out a couple of emails, just asking if those that are in attendance are still planning to call in. And then we can hold the vote later on in the meeting, if that's what you prefer, Chairman.
Yeah, let's go ahead and go. And then definitely on the ones that I know RSVP that we're expecting to be here that aren't, let's if we can also get someone to maybe do phone calls to them or text messages.
Okay. Yes, sir.
All right, very good. All right, folks. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. And we'll be working off the agenda that was submitted in the packet that went out to all of us as board members. And the first part up, I'll go through a few announcements on some of the staff changes. The first one I'll start here says Sheldon Andrews and Deanna Barrett have joined the compliance team. And then Melly Napolitano, I believe, if I butchered it, I apologize, transitioned from the compliance team to the strategic populations team as a strategic population specialist. And then Brandy Rowley Logan joined the programs team. And then Tammy Roper and Winston Oluwale have joined the apprenticeship team. And then Dana Brewer has joined the data and information team. So a lot of changes, as we've grown to appreciate the transition that occurs with the group working and supporting us. We were very appreciative of those that are moving to new roles, those that joined the team, and we're looking forward to working with you. And with some of these changes, obviously, that means some individuals have left or leaving. First one is, many of you, I know y'all know Shamika Johnson. She has taken a position with Amazon, and so she's no longer with the Office of Workforce Development. And then Brittany Jenkins Morrow's last day with OWD is November 24th. And Terrence Hale's last day is November 30th. And so thank you for your hard work and service. And obviously, you will be missed with us here on the team. We would typically go into the agenda and the minutes. We'll hold that until we reach our quorum. And to get us started, let's go ahead and jump right into the committee reports. And first up, we're going to have the Chairwoman Karen Vieira, who's the Chief People Officer of Church's Chicken. She'll give us a brief update on the Adult and Dislocated Committee.
Thank you, Chairman Dallas. We did have our Adult and Dislocated Workers Committee meeting on Wednesday, November 10th. There were no action items before the committee, but we did have a few reports that I'll just go over briefly. So during the meeting, Kim Morris and Michelle Mason from the OWD Strategic Populations team, they shared an update with us on the Federal Work Opportunity Tax Credit, which has been extended by Congress to 2025. So that's good news. And that incentivizes employers to hire individuals from the 9 targeted populations, including areas that impact us, which is our qualified veterans, justice involved individuals, and summer youth employees. So to assist, a resource guide was created by the USDOL, and our Office of Workforce Development is actively sharing the business services teams throughout the state so that they have that information. Next up, Brandon Ona he informed the committee of a recent change to the state's Dislocated Workers Grant guidance, which is also good news because it expands eligibility to long-term unemployed individuals. Individuals unemployed for 27 weeks, either consecutively or non-consecutively, are now eligible so long as the most recent full-time employment status does not reach 5 weeks in length. And this clearly expands the number of Georgians eligible for services under the grant. So also good news. And then Roberta Levitt and Amy Jones, they are from the WorkSource Southern Georgia, shared a presentation for all of us on the healthcare industry in the region and what they've been doing over the past 2 years. And they began an initiative to expand healthcare education in middle and high schools and to help meet the community's need for workers in healthcare, as we know that's a declining area. That included a summit attended by secondary education staff, work-based learning coordinators and counselors, as a chance to hear directly from employers in the industry on what's happening and how they can address the needs. They've also extended webinars and have been integrated in allowing the potential participants to get more of a firsthand exposure to the inner workings of the healthcare industry. And their efforts have paid off because they've increased the interest in healthcare career paths for the citizens of Southern Georgia. So very positive outcome with their work and greatly appreciated. And then finally, Santrissa Johnson from the Department of Human Services provided an overview of the SNAP program. And it's the workforce development initiative that emphasizes self-sufficiency by offering training for vocational skills, GED testing, English as a second language, and soft skills for its participants. The SNAP program determines the needs for the participants and adjusting accordingly. They're connecting them with the workforce partners for employment opportunities if they've been recently unemployed. In addition to assisting the participants find work, the program aims to make the transition as smooth as possible by eliminating barriers. By offering these services, SNAP programs have been successful in aiding those affected by COVID. So it is helping our unemployment, and they are attending the unemployment events. So that was our committee report. Any questions? Okay. Hearing none, I will turn that back over to you, Chairman Dallas. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairwoman Vieira. That's thanks for the update. And I will ask, are there any other questions or comments for Karen and the Adult and Dislocated Worker Committee? And I clearly see there's no action items from this committee. So yes. All right. Very good. Well, we will move on now to our Youth Committee. Our Chairwoman, Dr. Susan Andrews, Commissioner Susan Andrews. She's Vice Chair of the Harris County Board of Commissioners. She'll give a brief update on the youth, and I'm sure that she's going to turn it over to someone, but I'll turn it over to you, Chairwoman.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's good to at least see your icon or your face on Zoom. But we met with our youth committee on November the 9th. And we did have a quorum, so I appreciate those of you who serve on the youth committee for your dedication to our committee. We heard reports on that morning from Southwest Georgia, specifically from Dougherty County, as they talked about their program and how they have worked with in-school youth during this time when the youth could not do their apprenticeships and their working with different companies, and how they had worked with them on resume building and had taken them through several modules and programs to keep those students engaged. And so it was good to hear how they were reaching out to those in-school youth to get them ready for employment, and they had a successful program. And during this time, the staff could just be sitting in their offices saying, oh, we just don't know what to do or how to reach out. But instead, as you all have heard from the adult committee, they've been working on tools and just reaching out to people in every way that they can. And Rosani had shared with us some of the tools that they've developed during this time. And she's going to talk to you about what those tools are and how they're implementing them. And it really has given them time to say, Okay, what kinds of tools can we create that will make it easier for our regions and for those people who are in school, working with in-school youth and out-of-school youth, and with different groups that have barriers such as veterans or those who've been out of work for a while. So Rosani, if you'll take it over and talk about those tools, I would appreciate that.
Yes, sure. Thank you, Dr. Andrews. So during our committee, we reported on 2 tools that we have, well, several tools, but 2 guidance letters, implementation letters that we have created. The first one is on youth work experience, and these workforce implementation guidance letter, which otherwise we call it WIG, was aimed to just expand the definitions and different things, components within the youth WEX, right? And this is, we noticed after monitoring our local areas on PY20 that there were some things that were common among our local areas that had to do with WEX contract and some of the components within this WEX process or workforce, youth work experience services. So we created the WIG, we expanded the definitions, but along with that, we created like samples of a complete WEX contract, and we also added samples for the timesheets. That's with our first guidance letter. With our second guidance letter, this guidance letter has to do with data validation, specifically for individuals with barriers. And in this week, we just provided the local areas with a practical method on looking at data validation and data validation for individuals with barriers. Oftentimes, the individuals that we serve have multiple barriers, and it's kind of complex to figure out what to do with all this information, right? How to gather the information, what documents to request, when to request these documents, which ones we have to stay with, and how to make sure that what we are gathering, we follow the PII, the confidential guidelines for it. So we created this guidance to help the local areas determine, what barriers I need to validate with self-attestation and how to do that, what barriers I need to gather documentation and when. And as part of this week, we created practical case management tools. We created a low income determination checklist, and we created a individuals with barriers checklist. Both of these checklists are just quick case management tools that they can take with them when they're serving these individuals and making sure that they're gathering the information that they need to gather in order for our data to be accurate and reliable. And the third tool that we created for that was a frequently asked question, just to help the local areas if they have quick questions that they can just go ahead and reference that document and get their answers. We complemented this guidance letter with training as well. So we provided the week, we provided the tools, and then we provided a training for the week.
Thank you, Rosani. Our group had no action items to bring forward to the full board. So at this time, I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairwoman Andrews. Any questions or any other comments for the Youth Committee? All right, thank you very much. We will now move on to our next reports. We have our co-chairs, Dr. James Wilburn, who's Director for Military Academic Programs for Georgia Tech Professional Education. He'll give a brief update, and also who's co-chairing with him is Ames Barnett, is the owner of Barnett Southern. So Dr. Wilburn, I will turn the floor over to you for the Finance and Performance Committee.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, everyone. The Finance and Performance Committee met on November 9th. We did have a quorum. This was the first meeting since the consolidation of the two committees. So our first action was to reintroduce the co-chairs and members of the local workforce teams, and as well as the Office of Workforce Development staff. We also reviewed the policies or the duties of the committee, which include policy approval, ETPL appeals, sanction appeals, and budget review. Our next action during the meeting was to hear a presentation from Director Keith Dixon, who is in the Workforce Heart of Georgia. They're doing tremendous amount of work in utilizing the COVID funding, and it was impressive the number of veterans they were also able to support with that funding as they gained access to some of the workforce programming. The third item is an action item, and I will turn it over to Brittany Walsh to discuss the specifics of the one-stop certification criteria. Brittany?
Good morning. Thank you, Dr. Wilburn. So I'll kind of go through, what we've covered with this one-stop certification criteria change, but obviously if we, need to hold the vote until later, we can do that. So in the email packet for this meeting, Nia provided you guys with the final certification forms. There's 4 of those, as well as a list that shows the changes to the content. Wanted to make it a little easier to see what's moving on them. So in that list, anything highlighted in yellow has been added, and then items that are in red text we are proposing be removed. So before I cover those, just a recap for anyone who is newer to the board and hasn't been around for this certification. WIOA requires that all one-stop centers be formally certified by local boards at least every 3 years. However, every 2 years, the state board needs to review and adopt the criteria for the local boards to use when certifying those areas. So obviously that is this year. So the completed certification packets, then after y'all's approval, will get approved by local boards. And then for the 2-year period that they're active, any centers that get certified are certified under that criteria. Local boards are able to add additional criteria if they would like, but that, is up to them just based on their local area needs. So the forms that you have in the packet that Nia sent, we reviewed the criteria and are proposing the following changes. So Form A is the partner presence. Basically, that's just a schedule of who is available at the one-stop and when, and whether that's a physical or electronic presence. We're not proposing any changes to that because it's obviously fairly straightforward. However, Form B covers the accessibility and equal opportunity requirements for one-stops. So in this one, we're mostly proposing keeping the questions the same. However, we have added questions regarding, the last review of policies and procedures. When was staff trained on that? When was the last time that ADA compliance was checked? And then we've added a question about what accommodations are available for individuals with disabilities or English language learners. When an individual walks into the center, what's immediately available for them to kind of help them navigate what services are available and what may be the best for them. Form C covers any sites that meet the definition of a comprehensive one-stop. So for the most part, comprehensive and affiliate sites have the same list of criteria. There are a couple things that only apply to comprehensive ones. So I'll cover those quickly here. The first criteria is customer flow of services. And under this section, we've added a question about, again, resources available to customers upon entry to help them navigate the centers. And again, we're targeting, individuals with disabilities and English language learners, anyone that may have a more immediate barrier to kind of accessing and navigating a center. The next criteria is around the memorandums of understanding. And we're actually proposing to remove this as part of certification because we at the Office of Workforce Development, when we monitor the local areas, we already do a pretty extensive review of their MOUs through that. So both compliance programs and finance all look at these documents to make sure, they have the required components, that the local area and their partners are adhering to the requirements of that agreement. And so we thought it would be a better use of their time to just focus on the other criteria and not do another, sort of self-assessment of the MOU because they review it pretty regularly as well. The next criteria is operational details. So because we're proposing removing the MOU section, we are adding a question to the operational section that just touches on when was the MOU last reviewed, updated, and executed by all partners. Again, we review that pretty extensively, but we just want to capture that one piece of information to help in our review. And then the only other changes to this section are when and how were staff trained. The next two sections are statewide branding and customer satisfaction. We're not proposing any changes to those sections. We think the questions included there pretty well capture what we need to see. And then the final section is continuous improvement. So we've added a question there about how centers collect data on and evaluate services to strategic populations groups. Obviously, that's a focus and something we discussed, in the August board retreat as being a major focus. So we just want to make sure, that they're able to assess how they're capturing that data, and what stories they can tell from it to kind of help improve their services at the one-stops. And then the final form here is Form D, which covers affiliate centers. We are proposing the same changes as above with the exception, as above with the Form C, with the exception of statewide branding. Affiliate centers and comprehensive centers have different requirements around what, branding is required there. So that section is not included in the affiliate center form, but everything else is the same. And that concludes my report, Dr. Wilburn. I'll turn it back to you.
No, thank you much. If there are no questions, I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Dr. Wilburn and Brittany, thank you very much. Any questions, comments for Finance and Performance Committee?
No questions on the performance committee. Just wanted to say that Shamika and Brittany have been a huge help and they'll be missed. And don't know if this is the right time, but didn't want to miss that opportunity to thank them for all their contributions and all their work. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Excellent point. Always the right time to commend folks who are doing a great job. So thank you. Nia, let me do a check-in real quick. I saw Randy's note pop up there. Where are we at with in terms of members?
Yes, so I did see that Commissioner Dozier is on, as well as Chunk Newman, and with Randy Beal, that puts us at quorum. I'm not sure if anyone else called in because I'm not able to see those names associated with that phone number. But if any other board members did join, if you could let me know, that'd be great.
So that was the cue for if any, we've got the names we added. We have those now, we're at quorum, but did any other board member join? Because we want to make sure we properly document our records. All right.
It looks like we're right on the nose.
Okay. Very good. So let me go ahead and move back to our items requiring action. So if you would follow along with me for just a minute here. The first order of business is in the packets we received for this meeting. You received the agenda and the minutes, and also basically the agenda has all the items, and we've also heard 2 of our committee reports, or read 3 of our committee reports. So I'll start first with, is there a motion on the floor to approve the agenda for our meeting?
So moved, Randy Bill.
Thanks, Randy.
Second, Dale Keith.
Thank you very much. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. All right, hearing none, motion carries. Let's move to our next item. Is there a motion on the floor to approve the meeting minutes?
So moved, Randy Bill.
Thank you, Randy.
Second, Kelly Brownlow.
Thank you, Kelly. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, like sign. All right, motion carries. And We'll now move back to what we just heard in the Finance and Performance Committee. The action item listed here was the one-stop certification criteria. So do we have a motion on the floor to approve the modifications?
Chris
So
Tobiasen, make the motion.
Thanks,
James
Chris.
Wilburn, second.
Dr. Wilburn, thank you. Any questions or discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, like sign. All right, motion carries. All right, thank you very much again, Dr. Wilburn and Brittany. We appreciate your work on this. We'll now move into the executive committee. Well, friends, what you see here before us are the dates for our board meetings in 2022. These were approved by the executive committee. And so we're presenting these today for approval by the board. So is there a motion?
Motion to approve the action item on the dates. Randy Bill.
Thank you, Randy.
Second, Kelly Brownlow.
I think that was Kelly. I can't remember.
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. So any questions or discussion? All right, hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, like sign. All right, motion carries. Folks, thank you all very much for approving the dates for our next meetings. And just to make, and these are, I think these are all on, Nia, are these all on Thursdays, I believe? Like we've been doing?
Yes, they are the third Thursday of those months.
All right, excellent. All right, very good. All right, the next item up, we're now going to ask our Deputy Commissioner Kirchler to give an update on the retreat that we had here. I can't remember the exact date it was, Karen, but I just want to thank the board members that when we assembled in Callaway Gardens and we went through this process, and very thankful for your work and commitment to this. And so now Karen's going to give us a recap of this, and so I'm going to go ahead and turn the floor to you, Deputy Commissioner.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. So yeah, we met third week of August, the 18th, 19th, and so the board participated in a retreat facilitated by the Carl Vinson folks, and came up with some new goals, actually really just some tweaks of our existing goals, feeling like what already was in the plan was solid, and made some tweaks to that. So you can see the modified goals that we have that we're working with. The next day, the staff met with Carl Vinson to kind of review and assess what our resources were, what initiatives we currently had in place to support these goals, and what we needed to do to be really much more intentional and strategic in advancing these goals. So they kind of synthesized all of that. Then we met again as a team to review that and to begin to identify really some specific activities and key performance measures. And so where we're at, next slide, please, is that we've identified activities to support the activities for FY22 and 23 to support the goals. And we've begun to identify key performance indicators. We need to kind of really flesh out timelines. The fall has become very busy with monitoring going on. There's been a good bit of travel. And as you've heard, we've had a little bit of turnover that we've been contending with. And it's not all been turnover. Some of it's been filling positions that have been open for quite a while. So that's been a positive. But unfortunately, we're, I think, a little further behind on this than I would like for us to be. So we're going to flesh out some timelines, make sure that everybody's in agreement with the key performance indicators. And one of the things that we're also doing is establishing Basecamp projects to manage the goal activities. We may move to a different project management tool, but this will, in the meantime, allow us to really begin to show progress on what we're doing, and we'll share access to all of these projects to the board members. So you can comment, you can be part of the discussion, and you can track the activities that are happening to support these goals. Next week, you'll receive a summary document and an invite to all of the Basecamp projects. Next slide, please. So one of the things that I feel like I really dropped the ball on relative to the board retreat was that a couple of folks had indicated they would really like to have information regarding local workforce development area board meetings. I was slow to make that happen, and I apologize for that. But what you'll be getting next week is an email from Nia that will include a map that just kind of refreshes you on the various counties associated with the different workforce areas. A document that has a table with all of the LWDA board meetings, their schedules, information about where they take place or how to access them if they are online. There will be contact information for the LWDA directors. And I believe that Nia is going to include in your email a CC with that director, sort of as a soft introduction, in case you don't know who those persons are. We'll also include contact information for Montevia Gamble, she's one of our OWD staffers. And anyone who wants to, kind of help us facilitate the process of you getting to a local board meeting, reaching out to them if you would rather we facilitate that than you do it yourself. Montevia is available to help with that, or if you have questions or anything like that, she's available. So you'll be getting that information as well, and as many of the board meetings that have been published that we have available to us, and as much information as we have available to us for each of the local areas, that's what you'll be receiving in terms of the table and the document. So hopefully it'll help you plan those opportunities. Another thing is that came out of the retreat for me especially was feeling like we need to do a better job of communicating with you all, but I'm not sure what that should look like and what you would prefer. So you're going to get a link to a survey. It's a very short survey. You'll receive that in an email next week. And basically it's around how often do you want to hear from us, and what types of information would you like to receive from us? Do you want research? Do you want data? Do you want highlights of local areas? I don't want to duplicate what we get in our quarterly newsletter. The staff works really hard on that. But there might be some information that you would like around, specifically around strategic populations, or more in depth. And so we're trying to figure out what we can best serve you with, and how frequently you would like to hear from us, because I don't want to inundate you, but I also don't want you feeling like we don't know what's going on with these folks. What are they doing? So, or if you're just interested in general workforce development information around the state, the United States, that sort of stuff, we'd be happy to start curating information. We get a lot of articles and do a lot of reading through this office, and happy to share that with you should you be interested. So please be on the lookout for that. So that's kind of an update on the retreat activities and what's come out of that and what will be coming out of that. And I hope that you'll all take the opportunity to at least log into the Basecamp projects. It'll be an opportunity for you to see what's going on if you really are interested. And we'll be reporting out more frequently on the progress of those specific goals. I'll make a point of each of our future board meetings to address specific activities around these goals so that you're aware of what's going on. Next slide, please. So just kind of generally, there's been a lot going on this fall, and I wanted to let you know a little bit about some of the things I've been doing and some of the things staff have been doing. We had many of our, and I don't have everything listed here on this slide, but we had many of our staff members attend CETA, which is the Workforce Development Professional Development Conference for Workforce Development Professionals. Oh, that was a mouthful. But many of our team members attended that in September. I had the opportunity with Chairman Dallas to attend a Youth Apprenticeship Summit sponsored by Career Ready ATL in September. And that was a great opportunity to connect with stakeholders and other providers within the metro area. The goal being to develop a model for youth apprenticeships for opportunity youth and to really develop a robust program within the metro area. My hope is that we can utilize that work and as a model that can be implemented around the state so that while one size doesn't fit all, maybe everybody doesn't have to reinvent every part of the wheel every time. Also, in late September, beginning of October, along with Chairman Dallas, I was able to attend the National Governors Association Workforce Development Annual Symposium. And Chairman Dallas, would you like to take the opportunity to announce your news about this at this point?
I guess I will. Thanks, Karen.
To put you on the spot, but I think it's kind of a cool thing, and I think it's important to share.
Well, hey, I really appreciate your support. I appreciate and the entire team, Commissioner Dozier. Thank you very much for your support. I guess last month I became the chairman of the Association of State Workforce Board Chairs, and so really excited about that. And we'll be meeting in DC for our winter meeting in late January. So Karen and I will be heavily involved at the national level, and I could not do this or be in this position without the support of this board, this state. Just so many learnings, and I'm really excited about it. And Karen is, as chair, I get to appoint an executive committee made up of board chairs around the nation. And I also get to add a person who is the director supporting these organizations. So Karen Kirchler is also officially on the executive committee with me. So the two of us will be tag teaming and working on things going on around the nation, and really excited about it. And we will provide updates for our board, and whatever items are on the agenda, we'll make sure we bring items, but also if things are going on around the nation, we're going to bring it here to Georgia as well. So a lot of opportunity for us, very excited about it. And just thanks again to all of you for your support. And it's nice to be able to, for Georgia to be in the lead, especially considering the fact that we're a great place to do business. So we're really excited about it. Thanks, Deputy Commissioner.
Yeah, and I can just say that Chairman Dallas's election was unanimous, and I'm sure that it's just a reflection of everyone's respect for him. So I'm excited about the opportunity this presents. And I have to say, attending there was a great chance to connect with counterparts at the state level who are doing the same work that we are, and to learn about how workforce is implemented in different states. And it'll be a great opportunity to bring back information and to share the good stuff we're doing as well. Brandon Ona, our Director of Business Services, attended the Georgia Economic Developers Association this fall, and he and I and Marcus Weathersby, our apprenticeship manager, also attended the Next Generation Manufacturing event that was held here in Atlanta. I had the good opportunity just this week to participate in the WorkSource Fulton's local board meeting, and I really appreciate Brett's invite, and was really impressed with that meeting and the information that he delivered to his board. I thought it was a really, really informative, well done meeting. I've been working really hard to inform the TCSG State Board members about our office and the work we do through WIOA, and have the opportunity monthly to participate in the TCSG State Board meetings. So my goal is that they feel comfortable in their circles of influence in advocating on our work. Certainly they do it for the agency as a whole, but also if they're better informed relative to WIOA, being able to speak to local workforce concerns, that's my goal. And so I've had the opportunity to speak to the state board a number of times and participate in the fall leadership conference for TCSG. This week was exciting in that we had the opportunity to present to the House Higher Ed Appropriations and Economic Development Committees to give them kind of a WIOA 101. It was a lot of information packed into a short period of time. We talked about an overview of WIOA funding, governance structure, the work that we do, and then how local boards have a great control over the operations and appropriations of funds to help them better understand how everything flows. And also we talked about performance, the great work that everyone's doing and how our performance looks around the state, and the return on investment that WIOA dollars represent. So I was very happy to have that opportunity. And we had the opportunity to meet with Senator Dugan and his staff. They have expressed interest in apprenticeships and finding ways to support apprenticeships. So we've appreciated his interest. And so we're just working hard to try and raise visibility where we can around workforce, and appreciate these invitations that we're getting, and that the commissioner and our external affairs assistant commissioner, Mark Peavy, have facilitated for us. So last thing I want to talk about is funding. If you will go to the next slide, please. And basically to just let you all know that we have just rolled out our third-year funding opportunities. And so we have a little bit of money in the adult pot, a little bit of money in the youth pot, and a little more money in our dislocated worker pot. And these are funds that have to be expended by the end of this fiscal year. So we put this out to the local areas, and we've let them know that we have some priorities and some requirements that will align to the goals identified by the State Workforce Development Board. So for instance, we're looking for proposals that really have specific strategies that to serve our strategic populations. So our homeless individuals, our adult ed students, our vets, English language learners, et cetera. So, and ideally we're looking for projects that have very clear ties to employment opportunities that can, if at all possible, have letters of support and commitment from employers that will guarantee interviews to training completers. So that's on the rollout right now. We made that announcement to the local areas yesterday. Our COVID DWG grant, we have requested a modification. We're awaiting a response from USDOL on that. That modification would give us an extension for a year, and it would also realign our performance outcomes from temporary, it would take some of our temporary employment outcomes and shift them to training outcomes. So we'd serve the same number of individuals through the grant as we had proposed, but we would just have a different emphasis on activities. So we're awaiting approval for that, and hope that that will be forthcoming here soon. We submitted a state fiscal recovery fund request of $4.2 million to support apprenticeship expansion. The state fiscal recovery fund is part of the state's allocation of American Rescue Plan funds. It's like some of the latest iteration of that funding to be rolled out by the state of Georgia. This is a competitive grant process, so there were lots and lots of applications around it. So we're hoping that what we proposed would be an attractive opportunity for those who are reviewing the grants. But we should know on that. Ideally, I think they have an ambitious timeline, but I believe we might know by January if we receive those funds. As some of you know, I'm sure the president signed into law the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act this week. In my cursory review of this, it looks like most of the workforce funding that is contained in it will be on a competitive grant basis versus allocations to the states, and that it'll be centered around training development for jobs that are associated with the infrastructure plan. So there's a lot of training that would have to occur, say, around broadband installers and things like that. So the opportunity for systems to develop training programs to support these sorts of jobs. We're waiting on a brief to come from the National Governors Association that will kind of break down. They're doing an analysis of the bill and where opportunities lie for workforce. I expect that brief to be released probably by the end of this week, and I'm happy to share that with the board if you all would like to see it. So those are kind of highlights of what's been going on here and the state board recap. I'm open to any questions, Chairman, if anyone has any, but I appreciate the time.
This is James Wilburn. I do have a question. So when do the third-year funds need to be spent? So how much time?
We have till June 30th of FY 22, excuse me.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Deputy Commissioner Kirchler? Excellent. I will just, first of all, Deputy Commissioner, thank you for your hard work. And I know at the national level, your engagement there was clearly noticed by my colleagues and very much appreciated. And I also want to thank the board again for the recap on the retreat, how important that was, because it's helping us to solidify our game plan going forward. And all of us are stakeholders in that process. So looking forward to not only continue to get your comments on this, but actually as we work on our plan overall, which is upcoming, I'm excited the fact that we've actually we've weighed in and we're going to make the modifications that we feel are necessary based upon today's environment. We live in these unique times right now, unprecedented times coming out of the pandemic, and workforce will continue to be a major topic for all of us. And I'm really excited that we're all engaged and involved in this process. And I want to also thank our local areas for their engagement and supporting these efforts throughout the state. So great job, Deputy Commissioner, and look forward to you and I are going to be spending a lot more time together, not just for the Georgia, but around the nation as well.
Thank you.
All right, next up is Kristen Larhoven, who is going to give us a firewall presentation. Kristen, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you explain.
I always get the fun topics, right? Well, everyone can blame Dr. Wilburn on this one because this is a follow-up to his question in our last board meeting. So at least it's not me proposing the boring topics.
I'll take all credit.
I appreciate that. So this will be real quick, but Dr. Wilburn essentially just asked about the TCSG WIOA firewall. And for those who kind of don't know the background of this, TCSG wears a lot of hats within the workforce system. And so on top of being the governor's fiscal agent for the federal WIOA funds, they also participate within the workforce system using WIOA dollars. And so when you've got federal money coming in to kind of one part of the house, and eventually that money is going into another part of the house, you've got to have a firewall that kind of says how that happens, right? We can't be paying ourselves on one side without legitimate barriers in place. So essentially, all of our dollars, as you know, either stay up at the state level for the administration of the grant or pass down to 19 local workforce development areas. Those local workforce development areas are responsible for providing services to participants and everything else that encompasses. So then you have the colleges that kind of sit on the other side of TCSG, and everyone knows what they do and what their role is. So when you see that funding tend to go over to the other side, it happens in two ways. Either we're paying for participants to enroll in TCSG institutions for different programs, or some of those colleges are acting as service providers for different things for the local areas. And so there's kind of two arms of how that happens. We have our eligible training providers list, which is something that everyone who wants to provide training to our participants has to get on. And then our local areas for their service providers have to go through typical government procurement. So if you see money being exchanged, it has to have gone through these two ways. So our firewalls essentially have to live within these processes. So I'll just go through those real quick. The first one with the eligible training providers list, if you've heard about this on the board before, it's probably coming out of the Performance and Finance Committee, or our Data and Information Director, Stephen, is up here giving a presentation about something new with this. But our responsibilities with this list is that us as OWD hosts the list of WIOA training programs for the whole state. So we have a website. If you were a WIOA participant, you could go to that website and find all of the training providers and training programs that you are approved to use WIOA dollars for. We also establish minimum standards for someone to gain entry on that list. So they have to meet performance year after year in order to stay on there. We don't want a failing provider to continue to receive government funding and it not benefit our participants. And we also monitor that program for that performance. So we set minimum standards, and then local areas enter data. We use that data to have performance reports that we give back to the local areas. So every year we submit those performance reports back to the local areas, and it's, they're numbers, right? So it's not us going in there and kind of judiciously saying, we don't think this one's really meeting criteria. It's a number and you either hit it or you don't. And we give those deficiencies back to the local areas. The firewall here is that we do not approve the programs to go on the list in the first place. So each local area puts up for approval the providers that they would like to use. Local areas have to, at a minimum, use our minimum performance standards, but they can also establish their own performance standards. And a lot of our local areas do have their own that go above and beyond what we require at the state. We do not direct a local area to review or add a particular training program or provider. That's all done at the local level and is overseen by their local boards. I talked about the fact that we do produce the performance reports. When those performance reports are produced every year, we give those back to the local areas. And then based on whether a program has met or not met, both again, our standards and the local area standards, the local areas will then, if needs be, make the decision to take the provider off of the list. A provider can appeal that decision. The first appeal is with the local area and their board themselves. And then the second appeal, again, because we can't have that control at here, is actually with the Finance and Performance Committee at the state board. So that hasn't happened in a long time. So probably no one remembers getting one of those appeals, but appeals do happen. A lot of times when they happen, they're adjudicated at the local area. It can be data entry errors, all kinds of things, but that can happen from time to time. So that's that arm, that wheel of the house. The other side is procurement. So if a college is performing an actual service like case management or follow-up, or something that's outside of just educational programs, they will have been selected through the local area's procurement process. So keep in mind, each of our local areas and their fiscal agents have to be local governments, so city government, county government, or regional commission. So we are working with entities that have very detailed, very specific procurement processes. And then on top of that, they've got to follow state and federal procurement rules as well. So this is a very specified process. We do not complete or oversee local program procurement. Local areas have to do that themselves based on their own local standards. And again, our standards and federal standards. Local areas will work with their boards to decide what needs to be procured. So this looks very, very different based on the local area you're going to. Some local areas provide direct services through themselves and their staff. So for instance, like some counties, it will be county staff actually providing WIOA services to participants. In other areas, they bid that out and it's all kinds of different groups that win those contracts to provide those services. But the board, they're working with their local boards to decide if they're going to bid something out, the scope of the services, program design, the length of time that it's going to be bid out, the nature of the services, and of course, the budget and dollar amount that goes along with that bid. OWD has no role in that. That's purely a local board function. We do, however, monitor local areas for compliance of their own standards and with the federal standards. But this takes place after the fact. So local areas go through procurement, they decide what that bid process is going to look like. They complete that, they make their selections. And then the next year when we're coming out to monitor, we're just monitoring to ensure that they met the technical standards for what a good procurement is supposed to look like. That happens again on the back end. What can happen during that process is we do answer technical assistance questions for the local areas regarding procedure. So if they want to know how a federal rule is supposed to impact a local rule. For instance, one of the most common issues that city and county governments have is that a lot of city and county government procurement has local preference rules written into their procurement guidelines. So like if you're City of Atlanta, they want to give preferences to businesses who do business in Atlanta. Federal rules don't allow for that. So there's a lot of things that we will have to help local areas kind of decide and walk through. But again, it's just relating to technical procedure. OWD does not have a role in judging the outcome of any of the procurements, and we can't answer those questions even if asked. So preference questions, whether or not we think that one bid is better than another, again, it has to be about procedure. So I hope, Dr. Wilburn, that answers your question of what those firewalls look like. And I'm happy to answer any other questions that any of the other board members might have.
Sure, Kristen. Actually, I mean, I think that's a great macro overview of the firewall. I do have some specifics, and I think a lot of the questions, or the reason that I wanted to cover it, was to discuss kind of down, well, our role in ensuring the firewalls are being adhered to at the local level. And for example, I think in several meetings, you've reminded me that anytime that there is a vote on the floor that involves the veterans training program that Georgia Tech offers, it is my responsibility to recuse myself from any vote because of the conflict of interest that would arise from the allocation of funds to a program that would benefit my organization.
Right.
And so in that sense, my concern, or what I'm trying to understand, is we can look at every program on the ETPL and put it into one of two buckets. It's either a TCSG program or it is not a TCSG program. And so if you're sitting on a local workforce development board and you are a member of the TCSG, you are either voting for a program that is part of the TCSG, or you are voting for a program that is viewed as a competitor or supplement to a TCSG program. How do we navigate? I mean, have we put out information to those members that it is their responsibility to recuse themselves from any vote that would be for a program or against a program that is viewed as a competitor or viewed as their own program? And how are we ensuring that is taking place? For example, is it captured in the minutes? And then it brings up the larger question: if you cannot vote on the approval of any program, because every program falls into that, what are the grounds for the composition of executive committees as part of those boards, and the board itself if you're a non-voting member essentially for any program?
Yeah, that's actually a very timely question. And we've got Brittany on this call. Brittany, I'll try to take a stab at this, but if, excuse me, if I miss something, please jump in. So we actually just reissued some guidelines on conflicts of interest for local boards. But you're correct, there are TCSG local members who do sit on local boards. They can come in through one of two required seats, either through an adult education provider. Actually, excuse me, I'm gonna turn. So sorry. Actually, they can come in through three possible seats. There's an economic development seat that sometimes local boards do sit on. Adult education will sometimes be one that a TCSG local member will sit on. And then of course, post-secondary, that seat is sometimes held by a TCSG member as well. So yes, more than likely there's going to be a local college representative on the board and in some form or fashion sitting in one of those seats. You are correct that they are not allowed to vote on any procurements or contracts that would be going to their college, or any ETPL items for approval or award. That does not mean that they can't vote on other contracts that are not being awarded to themselves, or other training programs through the ETPL that are not being awarded that way. We do, so if that answers your question a little bit, just because you are a provider in that space doesn't mean you can't vote to award someone else that, because you lose the conflict if it goes to someone else, essentially. So you can't vote on your own stuff, but you can still vote on other people's entry into that. Now, you know, if you participated in that bid and it's a procurement there, there's potentially still a conflict there, and we would work to identify that. We do give the local areas substantial guidance on helping them wade through conflicts. Just the way that the boards are set up with vocational rehabilitation, the Georgia Department of Labor, all of these groups that we do business with and we have contracts with. We have 4, 5, 6 different contracts at any given time with the Georgia Department of Labor, and they have mandatory inclusion on the local boards. So there's all kinds of times when we're kind of doing business with an entity that is a required partner on the board. So we make allowances for these conflicts. Don't think that the conflicts are necessarily a bad thing. You just have to note them and document correctly. So beyond that, you're correct that if someone sees that they have a conflict, Our guidance is that they state that they have the conflict, state that they are not voting because of the conflict, and then that has to be noted in their meeting minutes. And when our staff are doing yearly monitoring, and then also every other year we do local board certification, we're looking for that type of thing in the minutes to make sure that local areas are doing that. Conflicts, especially with government entities that you're doing business with, are not always black and white, because people, it's not necessarily your personal profit, it's an organization's profit. We always want to err on the safe side, but questions come up all the time. And I think Brittany and her compliance staff do a really good job of trying to give technical assistance to local boards with that. So they're certainly not on their own when diving into that material. Dr. Wilburn, did I answer everything there?
No, you did absolutely. And I see Randy has a question, so I'll be brief. So we're saying that we actually do go through and review on a biannually the local workforce areas to ensure that we do in fact see those abstentions from voting on programs that are specifically there. So that we do look for that documentation, correct?
We do. We look at that in their minutes and review their board composition. Brittany, is there anything you want to add to that?
I was just going to clarify. So the biannual review and board certification, we look at, bylaws and generally the structure they have set up for how to handle recusals. But then, every year in monitoring, we are looking at whether those conflict of interest forms have been executed by all members. We're looking at the board minutes to make sure that those recusals are reflected there. And then Kristen mentioned this, but we try to offer a training every year to local boards on kind of everything around composition, but also specifically this piece because it is obviously very important. And we do have a resource guide. I think Kristen mentioned this, that we've released recently, and what we did buff up in that last revision is how to handle recusals and what constitutes a conflict of interest. Because exactly to your point, all of these stakeholders do sit on local boards. And your perspective is important, but obviously there are steps we need to set up to make sure that no funny business happens. So that is a priority of ours in OWD.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you so much. And the last thing I would say, and it's probably something that Stephen can help out with, was just, since we've done this merger where TCSG is the stewards of the WIOA funding. Have we seen any shift in terms of the number of TCSG and non-TCSG programs in terms of numbers on the ETPL? Have we seen any shift in terms of one going up, one going down since that merge? And similarly, have we seen any shift in the number of dollars going to TCSG programs versus non-TCSG programs, up or down either way? It'd just be interesting to see that we're maintaining about the same as where we were. So. Okay, that's everything. Thank you so much. I appreciate your patience.
Thank you, Dr. Wilburn. And Randy does have his hand up. Randy, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. You made this statement that a TCSG member could not vote on monies coming to their own college. My question would be for clarification. Wouldn't that mean for any monies going to any technical college system of Georgia that a person in the technical college system should not be voting? Whether it benefits their particular college or not, it still benefits the college system of Georgia.
Yeah, we would probably interpret that conflict to be held widely. So where that would come in, some boards have one college that they do business with. But you're correct, there are some boards that are so large that they have 3-4 different colleges that they do business with. And yeah, I would, if I were advising that local board, I would advise them to hold that conflict for all colleges to vote on each other's stuff as well.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. It's just the way you said it, it made it sound like they couldn't vote on their own, but I took the interpretation to be the same as you just responded. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Kristen, for that covering that easy topic. We appreciate your hard work, and Brittany as well. All right, friends, I know that, well, folks, we've got a lot of material we're covering today. So if you need to take a break, please, cut your screen off for a second and take a break, but we're going to keep moving. Next up for the Employee Network and the Career Plus presentation, we have Michelle Mason, who's our Disability Services Lead. And I believe Rosani is going to help us as well. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Michelle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, everyone. Did I turn my mic on? Okay.
Yes, you did.
I make that mistake sometimes and be midstream. But we have some updates for the Employment Network. The Employment Network is thriving, but just in case we have members in the room that are not familiar with the Employment Network, I'll give a brief background on the Employment Network. The Employment Network is a free employment service for individuals who receive Social Security cash benefits. Those services include career counseling, job placement and follow-up, and primarily benefits counseling. And in return for those services, the Employment Network is awarded funding from the Social Security Administration. And this funding is not tied to WIOA funding. Now, how does that relate to workforce? Well, there's a direct relation of benefit between the EN and the workforce system. First, the EN complements the services already provided by the workforce staff and supports the local areas to expand their capacity and outcomes, specifically employment for the disabled population. And these services from the Employment Network generates, again, an additional funding stream for the local areas to support their gaps in services. I'll repeat that funding from Social Security Administration for services is not tied to WIOA funding received by the local areas. And lastly, the state income tax revenue is impacted once individuals leave cash benefits and return to employment. Those wages from employment circulate back into the economy, and we all know it's much better when individuals go back to work and are no longer dependent upon Social Security benefits. Next slide, please. Now, today we have accomplished a few things. The EN has served over 50 beneficiaries and received approximately $80,000 in disbursements from Social Security Administration. I'll repeat again, this funding is not tied to WIOA funding, which presents an opportunity for the local areas to meet those needs, such as supportive services for transportation, childcare, et cetera. The EN has secured memorandums of understanding with 3 of our local areas to provide those services out and about in the community. Those local areas are Atlanta Regional Commission, Northeast Georgia Regional Commission, and most recently, East Central Georgia Workforce Development. I'll pause and say thank you to Atlanta Regional Commission in agreeing to take the lead in helping us to get the rest of the Metro Atlanta area, local workforce areas on board. So we're very much looking forward to having them come on board as well as part of the Employment Network. We've also added 2 additional certified work incentive planners, or work incentive practitioners, pardon me. And I will say that to have 2 additional certified staff on board, it will help us to provide our primary service of benefits counseling. And we were able to expand our statewide coverage through virtual services, and the pandemic environment, for lack of better words, assisted us to be able to pivot to virtual services. Next slide. Moving forward, our goal is to continually increase the outcomes for the local areas, participants, specifically participants with disabilities, and increase our SSA reimbursement. We plan on doing that by increasing the number of MOUs with our local areas and to develop a pipeline of beneficiaries. To start to build on our process of building our pipeline, we had an outreach, a virtual outreach network event on October 20th. And the WorkSource Academy helped us to hold that via Zoom. We had roughly 80 participants that attended, and that from our local workforce areas and Social Security beneficiaries. So we're looking for that enrollment to continue to build. Next slide, please. And on this last slide, you will see a few tools we created to help us to market the program. On the left side of the screen is an informational one-pager for our potential participants to review and steps for them to follow and guiding them through the process of being enrolled. And to the right of your screen, you will see a tool for our local areas and our community partners to use in referring individuals for employment network services. These items are online and you will receive them in your packet to review also. And for the sake of time, we won't show these testimonies from one of our local areas regarding their success in coupling the Title I services provided by the local area along with the Employment Network Benefits Counseling Services, which in the end, the individual went through training, went through training successfully and is now gainfully employed. Nia will send that video along with the package in a follow-up email. And that concludes my update. Any questions?
I was just about to say that, Michelle. Are there any questions? Obviously, a lot of information and work here. So, folks, if you do want to follow up, please do let us know. All right, Michelle, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman.
Next up on the Career Plus presentation, Rosani, I will turn the floor over to you now.
Thank you. Good morning again. I just have a quick update on the Career Plus High School Equivalency Pilot. I don't know if everybody's familiar with the Career Plus High School Equivalency Pilot, so I'm going to tell you what it is. In the state of Georgia, we currently have two options for an individual without a high school diploma to obtain that credential. Both of those are standardized testing or tests. The first one is the GED. That one, everybody knows about it. And on October 2020, the state of Georgia added a new test called the HiSET. As I said, we have two options. Both of them are standardized tests. The Career Plus High School Equivalency Pilot is a third option that we're piloting here in the state of Georgia. And this option does not require for an individual to pass a standardized test. Instead, gives that individual the flexibility to go to a online program and get their high school credits that that individual is missing, and at the same time be dually enrolled in a technical certificate of credit, commonly known as TCC. The individual has to complete 2 TCCs and then complete whatever high school credits they were missing online. Currently, we have 5 pilot sites: Albany, Athens, Middle Georgia, Columbus, and Savannah Coastal. The pilot, it's been going on for 2 years. This is year number 2. During the first year, we learned that most of the individuals that were going through these program, through this option, were adults. Originally, when we started our partnership with Adult Ed for the Career Plus, we had set some funds aside for out-of-school youth, but we realized that we also had a need for adults, that because a lot of adults were going through the process. So this year, the Office of Workforce Development has set aside funds for adults and out-of-school youth. as a response to what we were finding in the first year. So, and why do we have this partnership? Because these are adults for the most part that are trying to get ahead. They don't have their GED. They were struggling, and they decided that they wanted to go ahead and get their GED and move on and complete some technical credentials or certificates to help them move forward and make a better income. So we had this year number 2 of the pilot, we have set aside funds, as I said, for adults and out of school youth. We're also hosting pilot site partnership meetings. These meetings are aimed to help both the technical college staff and our local office staff to just talk about their program, their service, what's working, talk about some of the challenges that they're experiencing so they can continue to expand their partnership. Another important area that we're working with adult ed for the Career Plus high school equivalency is that we're working on exploring the option to align a third financial aid option for these participants, because most of the time these are adults and that have very limited income, and income becomes a gap for them to finish this process, right? So we're working with the Office of Adult Ed as part of these partnership, and I have learned that the technical college system is huge. So they have their non-credit side and the credit side, and we're working with both sides to see how we can align this third financial aid option called Ability to Benefit, which is Pell for individuals that don't have a high school equivalency, and see how we can make this third financial aid option part of this process. And those were my super broad highlights for you this morning. Do I have any questions?
Zani, I do not see any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your hard work on this. All right, well, we'll move on next. I know apprenticeships has been a topic, a lot of conversation, and will continue to be. Brandon Ona is going to be our business service director, will handle the ASE rollout.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, board members, for having me on today to talk about the apprenticeship work that Georgia has undertaken over the past handful of years. We've had some pretty exciting milestones. But before I get to that, I did want to note, some of you all may already know, but this week is actually National Apprenticeship Week. So it's a week where the entire country, employers and apprentices and organizations come together and really highlight the good work on apprenticeship that's currently being done, and raising awareness of the registered apprenticeship model that we have here in the United States. So for those of you that aren't too familiar with what a registered apprenticeship is, I'm sure as the chairman just mentioned, you've heard about it, but to give you a high level, similar to what Rosani was doing earlier, a registered apprenticeship program is a little different than some of our traditional WIOA funded training programs for businesses, and that I like to say it's more of a training model instead of a program. There's a lot of different program components that's a part of it. So it's relatively complex, but it all leads towards a highly skilled individual that has plenty of opportunities to move up within a company, as well as lead the company as they're looking to innovate and advance. When we see this across all industries, as long as it's an apprenticeable occupation, there can be an apprenticeship for it, as our partners at the U.S. Department of Labor say. So this training model is made up of a number of components. First, it's a paid job for that apprentice on day one. So they're not going through a program and hopefully getting placed in employment afterwards. They actually have a job starting on day one. And then it combines some variation of on-the-job learning with a mentor, as well as classroom learning at a training center, similar to a technical college or a local industry organization that provides training, et cetera. And during this process, that's a minimum of a year where they're combining hands-on and that theoretical or book learning and combining that together, they're experiencing increased wages during that. And at the end of it, they're going to have at least one industry recognized credential. And the reason why I highlight that is because usually in Georgia, as we braid funding with other funding streams with our Hope Career Grant and whatnot, oftentimes our apprentices walk away with multiple credentials from their registered apprenticeship program. So that in a nutshell is it's registered apprenticeships. The benefits of it, obviously, for a company is that you have a highly skilled employee that has quite literally grown up and learned your exact processes. But also for that employee, they have more upward mobility. We find that apprentices often go into leadership at companies, whether they're a plant manager or some other, local C-suite equivalent. That is very common for apprentices that go through these programs. And of course, they tend to see higher wages, which is another great benefit. So they're oftentimes able to to improve their own lives as a result of a registered apprenticeship program. But to highlight here, so that's an apprenticeship program, but I wanted to say that first and then go into exactly the milestones that we've hit as the Office of Workforce Development and also the state of Georgia. So TCSG, along with our 22 technical colleges, all serve as registered apprenticeship sponsors. And that makes TCSG the largest network of apprenticeship sponsors in Georgia. Meaning that in all 159 counties, an employer has access to a partner to create a registered apprenticeship program for their company or a group of companies in their industry. In terms of some numbers that have come from this, we've had more than 900 registered apprenticeships registered apprentices that we've served. This has impacted more than 150 Georgia employers and companies, which is another great mark. And one thing I would note is that among the companies that we serve, the majority of them usually are small to medium-sized businesses. And so it's great that we're able to serve that specific target of the private sector or area of the private sector. And then, of course, over the course of the past couple of years, we've served over 35 high demand occupations. So like I said earlier, this spans all industries. If it's an apprenticeable occupation, an apprenticeship can be created. Next slide, please. So having said all of that, this work we expect to continue in the next coming years. Right now, we have the Apprenticeship State Grant, which some of you all may have already heard of. It's a US DOL grant that was awarded to TCSG. The size of it is around $1.8 million, and it's exclusively focused on expanding registered apprenticeship programs throughout the state. And here you can see some of the main goals that are also associated with it. The grant will support 800 new apprentices, and it will be able to support apprenticeships in 17 of our in-demand industries. And of course, we've aligned those with other major funding streams like WIOA funding and of course, the Hope Career Grant. So there's a lot of opportunity to bring more funding to the table for these apprenticeship programs. But the one thing I would say about the unique thing about this grant is it not only serves apprenticeship programs that are created through our technical college system, but also those outside of our technical college system. Next slide. Okay. So actually, one thing I forgot to mention when we were on the last slide is in terms of expansion, it's not just our focus is not just expanding the number of apprentices, but also expanding the capacity for us within the state of Georgia, specifically in the technical college system, to create apprenticeships. They take a lot of investment in terms of time, funds, personnel for companies and registered apprenticeship sponsors. And we want to make sure that we're making this as accessible as possible, because it does lead to really good outcomes and outcomes that are definitely sought right now during or as we emerge from the pandemic. So yeah, going back to the last slide. And then, of course, with that, I have some really good news. I know we were talking about some staff changes. We are actually fully staffed here at OWD for our apprenticeship team, which is, yeah, it's great. As you all met in the last in our last board meeting, Marcus Weathersby joined us as our apprenticeship manager. He's leading the team. And of course, Alexandra Brown has been with us for quite some time. And then of course, we've also added Winston Oluwole and Tammy Roper to our team. And those individuals may be a little familiar to you. They've worked in the workforce development arena and throughout the state for quite some time. They have tons of experience working with employers and with local communities and helping connect Georgians to employment opportunities. So we're very lucky to have them. And with a fully staffed team, we're going to go out and not only help our registered apprenticeship programs in the state grow with the ASC grant, but also look for other opportunities for us to create apprenticeships and of course enroll more Georgians. So with that, I'll open it up if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, this is Randy Bill. I have a question.
Yes.
When you use the term registered apprenticeship, now I'm very familiar. I come from the union side, and we've been doing apprenticeships for over 100 years. So we talk about registered apprenticeships. We're talking about through the Department of Labor Bureau of Apprenticeship Training. Where are you talking about? And in Georgia specifically, are they registering through the Department of Labor Bureau of Apprenticeship Training, or are they registering through someone else?
Great question. And the answer is yes. Georgia falls under the Office of Apprenticeship, which I think is the newer name to that office you referenced. And all of our apprenticeship programs are registered through the U.S. Department of Labor. So they are transferable, the credentials and whatnot are transferable if that apprentice or employer wants to expand or go throughout the country.
Gotcha. The reason I mention that is because there's pretty strict guidelines from the Bureau of Apprenticeship Training. So I just wanted everyone to know when we talk about registering apprenticeships, it's not a fly-by-night, deal. It is a pretty stringent, and they're constantly being reviewed for participation of minorities, women, and all of that. So anyway, I just thought that was worth noting. And once you find, and you say you're 100% sure those are, so I'm just going to name company X. It starts an apprenticeship program. They're registering that through the Department of Labor. You're 100% sure of that?
Yeah, for the apprenticeships that we serve, I mean, again, to a point I made earlier, apprenticeship is a word that's thrown around a lot. The apprenticeship programs that we serve through the Office of Workforce Development are those U.S. We verified that they're U.S. DOL registered apprenticeship programs. And in order for us to serve them through our grants that we have, specifically ASC, they do have to be US DOL registered. But one note I will make with the addition of Tammy and Winston to our team, they will actually be able to help companies and communities, organizations, whoever wants to create an apprenticeship, actually put together the documents, the types of the documents that are necessary and help work with USDOL to get that program registered and through the various hurdles that it is.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. And as we say in the trades, apprenticeship is the other 4-year degree. And we just have to do a better job of explaining to not only students, but educators that you can be very successful and make very good income and not have to go to college. And if we can change that mindset, we can end our skill shortage of workers in this country. But that's what it's going to take. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And Randy, Karen, I see you have a question as well, but I would like to make one comment with what Randy asked about and how Brandon responded to that. Yes, it's around the nation. I know that's a topic. It is a lot to do to register. It takes a lot of work. And really what I appreciate about what we're doing is we're assisting companies because they need that assistance so that they sign up and actually do it versus us giving up. So it's in combination here. And I appreciate the work going into making it easy for business to utilize this. And we know ultimately that's the win-win scenario for Georgia. Karen?
Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah.
I had a couple things. So I actually saw a wonderful social media post that I shared with Shamika that was comparing somebody that had gone through an apprenticeship program and through, started their career without debt compared to somebody who graduated from college with a huge amount of debt, and the differences of their starting salaries, just where they were. And the person starting with the apprentice program graduation actually was earning higher wages. So it was a great social media post. I know Shamika really liked it. So I hope y'all can take advantage of that, because that is the way we're connecting with with our youth today is through social media, and she's done a great job with that. And the other question I had is, are we seeing any changes with COVID-19 on the apprentice type of programs that are happening? Is that showing up yet, or is it too soon, or what are you seeing out there? And I have one more question. I'm just full of questions. So.
Oh, of course. Well, definitely. We are seeing changes over the course of during the pandemic. Granted, I wasn't in this particular role, but I have heard it was companies weren't able to invest in apprenticeships just because it requires, like I said, a mentor, more people on the floor or at your company, which was a little bit of an inhibitor with safety protocols. But yes, moving forward, especially among our skilled trades, i.e. manufacturing, a lot of manufacturers are making investments into automation, to have less people on the floor, or allow them to socially distance and, operate in a post-COVID world. And that's resulted in a need for higher skilled talent. So with our last grant, the apprenticeship, the American Apprenticeship Initiative grant, AAI grant, that was predominantly focused on industrial maintenance and mechatronics. And moving forward, we're definitely seeing that being a major industry as well, that in an increased need, because of course they need that higher skilled talent.
I would expect to see some shifts, because there's definitely shifts in all of our organizations that have affected the types of jobs and the levels of jobs following COVID. And the other question I had is, I didn't hear when this was, I'm so happy about the grant. That's wonderful. And I didn't hear when this would kick off or activate. You may have said it, I just missed it. So.
Well, we got it actually shortly before the pandemic, which was an interesting time. But so we currently have the grant. We set up the internal processes. We can actually start working with our technical colleges. We actually have a couple of apprentices already enrolled under the grant. So from now on, it is accessible, and we're working to extend out the life, given COVID-19, extend the life of the grant another year, to give more time for us to enroll apprentices and companies to set up these programs.
That's great. And the last thing is just congratulations on having a full team, because it makes a world of difference. So good job. Welcome.
Yeah, you guys have met, and you guys met Marcus at the last meeting, and then Alex. And with the addition of Winston and Tammy, this is a very robust team, and fully confident in their ability to expand apprenticeships. And also, to one of the points you made earlier, Chairman Dallas, it's not just this team as well. All 22 technical colleges have a designated apprenticeship coordinator, and a team there to help create these programs. So we're building a mighty statewide village, if you will, to help companies in our workforce access these programs.
Definitely takes the village. Thank you.
Thank you both.
Excellent, Brandon. Thank you very much. Any other questions for Brandon? All right, wonderful. Great job. Next up, that's Mr. Wilson, performance presentation. I'll turn the floor over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everybody. Well, Dr. Wilburn, real quick, I ran some quick numbers. Since we transitioned WEO over to TCSG, it looks like the breakdown's been hovering around 60 to 40 non-TCSG enrollments versus TCSG. So 60% of our enrollments are non-TCSG programs versus around 40 to 43%, depending on the year, TCSG enrollments. So if you want to do a deeper breakdown or do something for next quarter, just let me know. I know we're getting close to 11 o'clock, so I'll do a quick 101 on WEO performance for our new board members or folks who haven't seen these type of performance metrics since last year. So every 2 years we negotiate performance rates with ETA, USDOL, on 5 measures for each program. First measure is the Q2 employment rate. So we look at of our participants who exit in the second quarter after they leave our programs, do they have a job? We do the same thing in the fourth quarter after they leave our program. We also look at if they have earnings in that second quarter, what the median earnings are for that cohort. And then if they went into training or an education program, we look and see if they earned a credential or not, and get a percentage of those who attain a credential. And then relatively new for this year as far as counting, having a goal for this measure is measurable skills gains. And what this measure looks at, it's in programs, not looking at exiters, but folks who are currently in an education or training program. Did they demonstrate a skill gain while they're in that program? The easiest one to explain is if they're in a regular college program, did they go from one semester to the next successfully, passing all of their hours necessary to progress in their program? Some other ones, if they were basic skills deficient and were able to increase their post-test in that basic skills assessment past the 8th grade level, then they would count as a skill gain. If they're a part of an OJT or registered apprenticeship and hit the benchmarks that are established in those contracts who are in that apprenticeship program, that would also be a skills gain. Youth measures are fairly similar or almost identical to adult and dislocated workers. The only real difference is the Q2 and 4 employment rates also include if a youth goes into education or training after participation in the program. So as far as our overall grades, for each individual measure, the feds look at did we attain 50% of our goal or not, which seems pretty generous, but they also look at the average of our percent of goal attained for every measure, and the average of all 5 of those percent of goals needs to be 90% or above. And I'll demonstrate that a little bit in the next couple slides. So for PY20 adults, just kind of help you navigate this table. You've got your indicators on the first column. Our actual percentage or median earnings achieved in PY20 is the next column. Our goal is that negotiated goal column, and then our percent of goal is that final column. So for our Q2 employment rate for our adults, 82.5% of our adults were employed in that second quarter after percent. So our percent of goal for Q2 employment for adults was 106.4%. Q4, we were almost 80% for adults. Our median earnings was 7,096 for that Q2, which equates to around 29,000 annualized earnings. Credential attainment 78.3%, and our measurable skills gain rate was 64.5%. If you look at our percent of goals, you'll notice that they are well above 90% across the board. So our average overall program performance for adults is 125.9% of our goal, which is, again, well above that 90% threshold that puts us in trouble with feds. So we are doing spectacularly in our adult program. Go on to the next slide. Dislocated workers were even better. Looking at the Q2 rates, we were 84.7%. Our Q4 rate was 86.4. Q2 median earnings, almost 10,000, or basically 40,000 a year. 77.5% for credential attainment rate, and our skills gain rate was 62.9%. Compared to our goals in those metrics, again, we're well above 90%, over 100% in every category. So our overall average for the dislocated worker program was 141.4%. Again, well above that 90% threshold. In our youth, again, another success story. One I want to highlight for youth is the measurable skills gain. It's been a tough measure for a few years. This, again, like I said before, this is the first year we kind of had a goal for it, but it's been a tough nut to crack. And this is the first year that it being us having a goal. It's also the first year that we are above where we expected to be. We thought we'd be lucky to get close to 35%. We hit a 45% actual rate for measurable skills gains, which may seem like a low number, but you'll see in the next slide, we are very proud of that number. But overall, across all of our metrics, we were at an average of 115.5% of our goal for our youth programs. Next slide. So this slide is kind of all of our programs averaged out per indicator. So our average Q2 employment rate is 80.1%. Our average percentage goal is 108.2% for Q2. The national average for this indicator, 63.1%, so almost 20 points higher than the national average for the Q2 rate. Q4 is even better, so we're about 14% higher than the national average. Earnings is where we kind of fall below the national average, but that's fairly understandable in this region. Our credential attainment rate is above national average, and our measurable skills gain rate is well above, over 30% points higher than the national average. So very, very strong numbers across the board in all of our programs. So I'm happy to report that we exceeded, not only did we meet, but we exceeded all of our goals for every measure and every program, which is spectacular. Go to the next slide. Especially when you consider the calendar that occurred during this program year. This table, it's the best tool I have to explain our performance cohorts. Basically, if you look at that employment Q2 row, that first red box is the first performance cohort for that measure. And that's the employment Q2 rate. So if you look at, so basically what the exiters that occurred during that box, you look 2 boxes to the right because it's the second quarter after they exited, and you'll notice that that's January to March 2020. So the beginning of the pandemic is when we're doing our first cohort, looking to see if they got a job. The next quarter is the height of the pandemic. The next quarter after that, we're in the middle of it, and the fourth quarter of this performance year for that Q2 measure, we're in the winter surge. So we had, not only do we have spectacular performance during PY20, we did it in the midst of a pandemic, and our local areas should be commended. If we were in person, I'd have everybody stand up and do a round of applause because it's spectacular what they did and the circumstances they did it in. I'm very proud of them. Next slide. First, do we have any questions on general performance? I'll get into some of our participant characteristics and some ROI and stuff in a minute. Any questions on performance in general? Okay. So in PY20, this is kind of a breakdown by gender, race, and age of who was served. Majority female. We had, I think it's majority, at least a plurality, African American with white folks next, and ethnicity Hispanic or Latino. With that number is a little bit low compared to the state proportion. So we've got some opportunities to do some innovative things to help serve that community as well. Our age, as you break down, as you can imagine, are folks who are early or mid-career ages, are 19 to 44 is our 3 largest age groups. Last year, we served 17,861 folks. It's a little bit down, as you can imagine, with everything that was going on. We brought in 11,000 folks. We added 6,772 new participants during the year. 8,390 were exited. So we brought in 9,471 into the new program year this July. The map on the left is kind of our participants by county. Kind of resembles basically a population density map. So the second map is kind of the percent of our participant, or I'm sorry, it's the share of the unemployed population compared to our participant count. So it's basically a relationship showing our unemployed folks compared to our participant counts. And you can see it's kind of an inverse population map, but there are some other counties like Hall County, Carroll County that are larger counties that are also serving a good chunk of their populations in the unemployed category are being served by WEO participants. So, or as WEO participants. Go to the next slide. This is a breakdown of our individuals' barriers. Our number one barrier is low income, 97%. That would make this chart a little hard to read. But I did want to highlight our number one barrier being low income. Basic skills deficiency is our second highest barrier. and you can read on down the line. Rosani and her team have done a really good job on trying to, because we think these numbers are underreported. A lot of times staff, they're busy, or or our participants only have so much time. They don't want to bring in all their documentation, and so having to prove that they are this group or that group with documentation can be burdensome, especially if they're eligible. And why do we need to go make some trips around here to prove that I'm have this situation or that situation? So Rosani's team has developed some guidance around helping staff identify groups and populations and folks who have certain situations, and being able to document those situations so that we have a better reflection on who we're serving, and without having a real burden on data entry and document collection and that sort of thing. So next year's presentation, we look to probably have a better, more accurate reflection of who's being served in these categories. You go to the next slide. So these are our top industries and top occupations that folks were placed in last program year. Our top 3 industries: healthcare, transportation, manufacturing, and we'll add construction and admin and support, just do a top 5. So healthcare is number 1. You'll see our top occupation is truck driving, but our next 4 are healthcare related. Registered nurses, nursing assistants, LPNs, and medical assistants are our top 5 occupations for placements. And you kind of do a map to those industries in Georgia are in demand, are in demand industries as well. So we're doing a pretty good job of placing folks in demand industries. Next slide. So the first 3 little dots are average wages of our participants before they become a participant. So you can see they folks generally in the $400 to $5,500 a quarter range. The next 3 dots show the trajectory of our participants after they leave our program. The blue line is participants who participate in an occupational skills training program. The orange line are folks who maybe come in and get some resume assistance or some career counseling, but move on without some sort of training. So you can see a big difference in our participants who go on and receive training. They come out making, on average, again, it's average, not median, so it's a little different from the other slides, but around $9,000 a quarter, which is about $36,000 a year coming out. So you can definitely see the impact there before and after participation in our programs. And then the last slide is kind of an aggregation of that the previous slide. So we annualized all of our participants' earnings for PY20, and that broke out to about $181.6 million in earnings of our participants for the last program year. When you compare that to the allocation that our local areas and state administrative office received, 71 million, you see that compared to the earnings, there was a net of $110 million and change, or basically for every dollar invested in WIOA, we saw a return of $2.55 in PY20 in our participants' earnings. Okay, and I believe that's all I've got, unless y'all have questions.
Stephen, I don't see any questions, and that return on investment is really good, a really great return. I know we will continue to look at this. And to your point too, I know I was applauding throughout the presentation because we would have been applauding there if we'd been in person. I'm sure we did it in our own way here virtually, but great work by the team. And even under the situation, the circumstances, we're still able to deliver and produce really good results. So thank you.
Amen. Thank you all.
All right. Any comments, questions? All right. Thank you very much. So we'll move to I believe this is our final presentation the annual report, and Brittany will be back up to handle this for us. Brittany, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the annual report presentation is really going to piggyback off of everything Stephen just shared. But we wanted a chance to kind of go through what's included in this with you all. So as Stephen has mentioned, every year in October, he submits the performance report. So the actual data numbers that he's just shared, the USDOL. And then after that, we're required to submit a narrative performance report to accompany that data. So this report is really an opportunity for states to describe their progress towards, meeting the strategic vision and goals outlined in the state plan, and kind of explain, what's behind those numbers. Share accomplishments, challenges, highlight the great work that our local areas are doing, which again, kudos to them for everything they've done to get us to where we're at performance-wise. We're able to use this report to kind of highlight a bunch of those things that are happening at the state level and at the local level. We also use it in case there's any technical assistance needs we need to request from USDOL. I'll cover that in a little bit, but that's, kind of big picture what the report is for. It is limited to a 25-page maximum, so it is a much more succinct report than the state plan. Although we are able to provide, some appendices if there's things we need to expand on. But this report, each year they're specific to the program year. So this is going to be for PY20, which as a reminder covers July 1st of 2020 through June 30th of this year, 2021. So who is required to submit? Again, this report's a little bit different than the state plan in that it does not require all of the core partners to contribute. It really is meant to cover Title I and Title III of WIOA. So Title I is obviously the workforce development activities that OWD oversees and that the locals carry out. And then Title III is Wagner-Peiser, which is administered by DOL. ETA does encourage states to include the relevant activities with other partners, but those other partners are not then required to, provide a statement or a separate write-up or, submit the report to their agency. So it's really our two programs, but we kind of pull in the other pieces as needed to highlight the good work that we're doing. And again, because there is a page limit for this report, it's kind of hard to capture everything that's happening in this program year, but we're able to hit the big ticket items. So in terms of a due date, this is due every year at the beginning of December. This year it falls on December 1st. So because of that, we're currently in the process of drafting this report. It will be available after December 1st. And this report does not require a public comment period or a formal vote by the board. But again, these are publicly available both on ETA's website as well as our own. So we've already built out the framework of what this year's report will include. So we just kind of wanted to cover in this last presentation to you all, what we'll be discussing. Next slide, please. So obviously, most importantly, what does it include? Now we'll hit the big categories here. One of the main things that this report needs to cover is effectiveness in serving employers. So under this, we'll discuss the activities undertaken by the OWD and GDOL business services teams, as well as the OWD apprenticeship teams, to meet the needs of employers. So this is going to cover any guidance and training resources we've created, our interactions with business customers, economic development entities, the use of GDOL's, work opportunity tax credit, and more that, those teams cover. We'll also touch on customer satisfaction. So Stephen's team has created and sent out a short participant survey to evaluate, participant expectations and experiences within the workforce development system and the programs that they were in, just to kind of capture what their take, on those services was. We will also be discussing the WorkSource Georgia Training Academy. I know that we have shared this with you all a few times already, but obviously COVID kind of interrupted our plans for our annual conference, and we've delayed that to April of next year. However, we've been able to offer a bunch of webinars, some of which have been, discussed in this board call today, as well as various, TA guidance documents. So this portion of the report will highlight, all of those things we've been able to offer throughout the year to address the technical assistance needs of local areas and other system stakeholders. The report also briefly covers sector partnerships and career pathways. So again, it's a very short report. It's hard to get into all of the good work that's happening around this, but we'll briefly discuss, our investment in regional initiatives through the sector partnership grants, and the activities that, we're seeing for aligning the K-12 career pathways with opportunities in the workforce and post-secondary education systems. In addition to sector partnerships, we'll also cover some of the other activities under the Governor's Reserves funds. So this is actually a part of the report where we really work to highlight some of the local initiatives here. So we, in this year's report, are planning to talk a lot about the veterans and returning citizens programs that our local areas are administering. We've specifically highlighted some of the local efforts, namely WorkSource Middle Georgia's partnership with the Veterans Education Career Transition Resource Center, the Vector Center, to support transitioning veterans. So we really like to pull on those, real life examples of how these programs are being administered and the successes we're seeing there, and how all of that obviously contributes to the data that Stephen has shared with us. We also will discuss, obviously, rapid response is a big portion of the services, and GDOL takes care of that for us. So we're going to discuss, the activities that are going on there, touch on things like how many employer meetings, job fairs, as well as obviously discussing the impacts of COVID on the need for these services, and how, we as a workforce system and employers are adapting to those needs. The other piece that GDOL contributes here, obviously, is an overview of the Wagner-Pizer services. So they'll be discussing the employment-related labor exchange services offered under this program, methods for how customers can access it. And then again, of course, all of these sections will be highlighting the implications of COVID, on the delivery of all of our programs and services, because obviously no one has gotten away, with facing some repercussions of that. And in ETA's training about putting together the annual reports, it's a big thing, obviously, that they've stressed. And in all of the reports we're submitting to them, kind of giving them a rundown of what we're seeing from COVID still, how we've adapted to it, how are we going to carry those lessons into programs and services as we continue to come out of the pandemic. Obviously, that's a big piece of what we'll be covering. I won't go too much into it, obviously, because Michelle gave us a great overview of this, but we'll discuss the employment network and the services and partnerships we've been able to build in the last year. Brandon obviously gave the presentation on apprenticeship grants, but both the AAI and the ASE grants have portions in this report. So we'll kind of hit, the activities that are going on there and what we've been able to do in the last year. And then obviously the other big piece that we'll be covering is the COVID monies we received. So the National Dislocated Worker Grant. Obviously, this was a big part of our activities in the past year. So we'll be, discussing those services and what we're seeing under that grant. And then finally, the last piece that's required for this report is any waivers that we currently have in place. ETA, obviously requires a report out on how we've been able to utilize that waiver and provide information regarding our progress towards achieving the goals and performance outcomes from ETA's letter of approval for said waiver. So, they approve those on a one-year basis, and we can submit an extension for that, which we will be doing for the youth waiver in our state plan modification. But in this report, we'll be touching on how we've been able to utilize the youth waiver. And just as a reminder, we currently have a waiver. In normal times, WIOA youth dollars need to be spent 75% on out-of-school youth, 25% ISY. Right now, we have a waiver that allows us to do a 50-50 split. So, we'll kind of discuss how that flexibility has allowed some of our local areas to expand their service delivery, highlight the increase of services to those in-school youth we're able to serve now, as well as highlight some of the challenges for serving it in-school youth, again, to just kind of remind ETA of why this waiver has been important and all the good work that we've been able to do with it currently in place. So again, there's a lot of things that need to be covered in this report, and it's fairly short in terms of the things ETA usually requires, but we're going to try to cram it all in there and be able to, kind of speak to why we saw such great performance in what was obviously a difficult year. And again, we just want to credit the local areas for all the hard work that they've been doing. It is really, their efforts and passion that have gotten us where we are. So again, round of applause for them and a big thumbs up for all the work they've been doing. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Excellent, Brittany. And any questions?
This is Karen. I don't have a question, but I heard Brittany say it as she was going through the report about the impact of COVID. And I do expect that it's a lot of the entry-level jobs, such as administrative jobs, are going away. And I've seen that happen. I'm talking to the CHROs in Atlanta, and that is one of the areas that's being impacted as a result. And of course, those are entry positions. So just important to keep in mind, what other training or what other opportunities will probably have more of an influx of those individuals that are being displaced, and also losing the opportunity for entry in those areas. So as we think about these new programs and everything, and I heard you say it, so I know you're already there, but just want to emphasize it for everybody else that is involved in any way, that there's going to be a shift in what we can do to help people as far as the career paths. It's going to look a little different. So thanks. Just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen, for bringing those points out. And Brittany, for all the board members, we could get a copy of this as well.
Yeah, we'll submit it to ETA on December 1st. And once it's submitted, we'll post it to the website. We can share the link with that. For that with you all.
Very good. All right, any other questions or comments on the annual report? Okay, very good. Nia, I believe that was the last item on the agenda. And
yes, that is correct.
Okay, so the only thing left are just if there are any announcements. And just a reminder that our next board meeting, which we voted on today, is February 17th, 2022, which is hard to believe that I'm saying 2022 already, because I don't know what happened to this year. Don't know about you, but it feels like a blur now. And there's a lot of information in today's meeting, folks. Thank you very much for your support. One of the things I would just remind you of, Deputy Commissioner Kircher is going to be sending out that survey. And as we did in the retreat where we engaged, and what are things important to you, what our goals should be, the format, structure of the meetings, the things we're reporting out in the meetings. We're looking for your input on that so that we continue to work on the right things, focus on the right things. And the network itself is working very well, as you can see in our results. And that's because folks within this workforce system do work together. And I'm very proud of the effort and the work. And ultimately, I'm very proud of the people that are doing these things. And even when we have transition within OWD, we still continue to deliver and produce. So, and that happens because it's really a great working team. So folks, thank you all very much. I know that over these holiday break now, I know many folks are getting with their families. Please enjoy seeing each other. Please be careful out there. And I know that as whatever our new normal is, I'm sure we'll figure it out together. And I look forward to when we're back to face-to-face meetings. I know our retreat was a tremendous amount of joy being able to see folks. And I'm looking forward to being able to do that again here in the very near future. So thanks for your support. Thanks for the hard work. If you need anything from us, please reach out. And if there are no other comments, are there any other comments out there or questions? All right, hearing none, folks, we are officially adjourned. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Enjoy your time off. Enjoy your holiday break with your families. Thank you.